This story takes place on one of the best nights for kids around America, but the worst night for me. It was Christmas Eve of 2019. For a little backstory, 3 or 4 months before this event took place, I broke up with my girlfriend. Let's call her Jennifer. The event that caused me to break up with her was she stole over $900 from me. I caught her, and all she said before she left is, "This isn't over." Fast forward 3 months to Christmas Eve. Since we live in Texas and have a house in the hill country, every year on Christmas my family usually goes there to celebrate. However, this year I couldn't make it because I had to work. I was 17 years old and had just got a job at my local supermarket, and I had to work all day of Christmas. I stayed home, but I had no problem with being alone. On Christmas Eve night, it was getting late, probably 11 o'clock or so. I decided to take a shower and go to bed as I needed to get up early the next day. As I started to shower, I heard a strange noise from the garage, sort of like a metallic banging. I thought the noise was coming from the heater because I had put the water as hot as it would go. I took my shower, and when I finished, I went to go get in bed. As I did, I heard the noise again, although this time it was on the other side of the yard. I was confused because I didn't think there was anything over there. I went to go look out the window and see. I looked out and didn't see anything but my backyard, completely empty. I completely disregarded it because my backyard is pretty flat and empty, and it has nowhere for someone to hide. Now it's hard to explain, but my window is fairly large, and it has a blind spot to the left where there's a corner. Somebody could easily hide there, but I was tired and I didn't think about that at all. As I walked off, I heard a bang again, but this time on the window of my house, and as I looked out the window, I saw the figure of a person dressed in all black standing at my window. It made me jump. However, I wasn't too scared as I'm a fairly large dude and a high school football player. This all changed when the person at the window reached for his pocket for what I assume was a gun. I ran away from the window towards my parents' room to go retrieve my dad's shotgun. I knew he kept it in a safe and had the safe key under his pillow. As I was running to retrieve it, I dialed 911. As soon as the dispatcher answered, I heard the horrific sound of glass shattering. I made it to my parents' room and shut the door quietly. I whispered into the phone what was happening to the dispatcher. She said to stay on the line as the county sheriff was en route, but it would take about 5 minutes or so. I told her I was going to retrieve the shotgun. She said that's not a bad idea, but to only use it if I had to, and to use it with caution. I quickly realized my dad took the gun with him to the hill country because they were going to a gun range. I informed the dispatcher that the gun was gone. She said to make sure to stay on the line. For a moment, everything was silent, and I thought that maybe the burglar or whoever was in my house got spooked when they realized someone was home. My heart sank into my chest when I heard not one, but 2 sets of boots walking up the stairs. I heard a heavy metal pole scraping across the floor. I locked and barricaded the door to my parents' room. Then I almost passed out when I heard one of them talk, not in any voice but Jennifer's. She said, "Merry Christmas, Tommy." Then I heard a male voice mockingly say, "We know you're in there." Then they knocked on the door of my parents' room. I almost screamed and got underneath the bed. Jennifer then said, "Don't worry if you don't open the door. We'll open it for you." I heard the pole hit the door and the lock started jiggling. I had to put my hand over my mouth to keep from being too loud. Then, all of a sudden, I heard police sirens and Jennifer muttering curse words. They ran down the stairs to try to leave out the front door when I heard someone yell, "Freeze." I heard a bunch of yelling, and then an officer come in and announce himself and tell anybody in the house to make themselves known. I called out to him saying that I was Tommy and I dialed 911. He told me to come out slowly with my hands visible. As I left my parents' room, I saw the two being escorted out in handcuffs. The rest of my night consisted of paperwork and me talking to my parents, who were making a 3-hour drive to come home and be with me. This incident was very disturbing to me, and I'm grateful that I reacted the way that I did. Had I not, I may not be here right now. Christmas, everyone's favorite time of the year. It was certainly my favorite time of the year until one night that changed everything. And that one night changed my life forever. The Christmas of 2018, I was sitting in my living room watching the snow get heavier and heavier. I was enjoying myself drinking a cup of hot cocoa until I heard a knock at my door. I thought, who could it be at this hour? It was 1:18 in the morning. I got up to open the door, and to my surprise, I saw nobody. I closed the door, thinking I was being ding-dong ditched, or it was all in my head. 5 minutes later, another knock on my door. I once again got up to open the door, and when I saw nobody, I sighed and shut it. Almost immediately after, another knock on my door, and this time, I was quick enough to swing the door open, and I could just get a glimpse of a kid. He looked to be about 5 or 6 years old, running towards a house that was adjacent to mine. Surprisingly, I never knew who lived there, and quite frankly, I never seemed to care. However, this time I wanted to know why such a little kid was roaming out in the middle of the night, so I planned to go over there the next morning. Morning finally came, and I headed towards the house where I was sure I saw the little boy run into. When I knocked on the door, nobody answered. I figured they weren't home and I would come back later. That evening, I tried going back to the house and once again knocked. There was no answer again. I thought to myself this was quite strange. I then tried the door angle, and to my surprise, the door wasn't locked. Curiosity got the better of me, and I unlawfully entered the house knowing I was breaking and entering. As soon as I entered the house, I smelled something foul in the air, the smell of rotting meat. The inside of this house looked like nobody had lived there for years. I decided to check the upstairs of this house, and once I climbed up the stairs to the top step, I saw there were 5 bedrooms adjacent to each other. I checked out the one to my right, which was nothing special, just a bed and a closet. I checked out the rest of the bedrooms and found nothing. Great, I thought to myself, this was a complete waste of my time. Just as I was about to leave though, I felt a tap on my shoulder. It startled me. I knew I was caught red-handed, but just as I could say anything, I saw it was a woman, and she put her hand over my mouth and shushed me. I slowly backed away and then sprinted back to my house. As I did, I heard the blood-curdling scream of the woman telling me to come back. I got back to my house and decided not to do anything. At 3 a.m., I woke up to sounds outside my window. I looked out and saw the same woman staring back at me with a wide smile that ran across her face. Her crazed eyes stared back at me on the other side of the glass. I fell back in shock and then dialed 911. Cops were at my location within minutes. I had told them what happened, and they went to the house across the street. They searched it and found nothing. They told me there were no signs of anyone there since the horrifying murder that had took place in that very house. I was shocked. I hadn't heard of anything happening at all in that house, as it was an ongoing investigation. The cops were not able to give me the information I so desperately wanted to know. The next day, I did some research, and what I found made me sick. On December 31st, a mother and her son were brutally murdered inside that very house. December 31st, I linked everything together and stared at myself in the mirror in pure horror. The events that took place to this day have changed me forever. In the next 8 months, I quit my job and had to get therapy for the rest of the year. I would wake up at late hours of the night to see the woman's crazed smiles staring back at me, and I would scream in pure horror. It's been a year since this traumatizing experience, and I'm still recovering. This happened many years ago when I was a little boy. It was Christmas time, and my family and I lived on the first floor of a large apartment complex. I remember one day on a Saturday, my mom told me that Santa was at our apartment. We went to the event room that our apartment had, and they were doing a Meet Santa type of thing. There wasn't a whole lot of people there, but those who lived nearby and had kids would bring them to see Santa. We went there and got in line, and then my sister and I met Santa. I remember when it was my turn, he asked me what I wanted for Christmas, and I told him I wanted the new PlayStation. He asked me if I live here, and I told him yes, I lived right down the hall. He then told me he would see what he could do about getting me that PlayStation and gave me a candy cane. We then went back home. I think we made some holiday cookies or something. I don't quite remember that well, but where the story really gets interesting is later that night. I was in my bed and not really that sleepy, so I was just laying there playing on my Game Boy. I was in the middle of a level in my game when I heard a noise come from my window, which was literally right next to my bed. I looked up through the blinds, which were open so that you could see through them. I saw Santa standing right outside my window, and it really shocked me. He motioned for me to open the window, and I did. He then smiled at me and asked if I remembered him. I told him yes, and he handed me another candy cane. He told me he wanted to show me his sleigh. I knew something felt off about this situation. I didn't really think Santa was supposed to show up at my window like this, because it wasn't Christmas Eve yet, it was like a week before. But he was Santa after all, so I told him I'd like to see it. He told me to come out the window, and so I opened it wider. As I was about to climb out the window, the door to my room opened. It was my mother, and when she saw what was going on, she ran to me and grabbed me. When she did, Santa turned and ran away into the night. She asked me what was going on, and when I explained it to her, she told me that the man at my window was not really Santa, but just an imposter pretending to be him. She then called the police, but by the time they got there, the man was long gone. I was young, but when I spoke to my mom about the incident in recent years, she told me based on the information of the man dressed as Santa who was at the apartment that day, they were able to locate the man and he was caught. I'm so glad that my mom came into my room when she did.